The ocean has a way of keeping its secrets buried. Most of what happens beneath the surface never reaches human eyes. Depth hides truth. Distance protects mystery. But sometimes the sea decides to give something back. Sometimes it pushes a message onto the shore, and when it does, the message is never small. Along the rugged coastline of South Africa's western Cape lies a quiet coastal town called Gansbaai. To the outside world, it's known for one thing above all else. This is the great white capital of the world. For decades, these waters have been home to some of the largest and most powerful great white sharks ever recorded. Tourists come from across the globe to witness them. Scientists study them here. Filmmakers document them here. This stretch of ocean has long belonged to the great white. That's why what happened in early 2017 made no sense at all. It began on an otherwise ordinary morning. The waves rolled in as they always had. The air carried the familiar scent of salt and kelp. At first, the dark shape near the shoreline didn't draw much attention. From a distance, it looked like debris. Maybe driftwood. Maybe the remains of a boat. But as people moved closer, the scale of it became impossible to ignore. What lay on the sand was a body, a massive one. It was a female great white shark. Nearly 4.9 meters long, motionless, lifeless. A creature that once ruled these waters now lay exposed. Helpless and silent on the shore, great white sharks don't simply wash up like this. When they do appear dead, their bodies usually tell a violent story. Torn fins, deep bite marks, ragged wounds left by scavengers. Evidence of a brutal struggle. But the shark's body told a different story. There were no massive injuries. No signs of a prolonged fight. No obvious cause of death at first glance. Then someone noticed the underside. The shark's liver was gone, not torn away. Not ripped out by scavengers. It was removed cleanly, precisely. The incision was narrow and deliberate, almost surgical in appearance. Whoever, whatever had done this knew exactly where to cut. This alone was disturbing. But at the time, it was treated as an anomaly. A mystery, yes, but perhaps a rare one. Then another shark washed ashore. And another. Between February and June of 2017, 5 great white sharks were found dead along the shores of Gansbaai. Some stretched over 15 feet long. 4 were missing their livers. 1 had its heart removed entirely. Every single carcass told the same unsettling story. Clean cuts. Minimal damage. No signs of a desperate struggle. This wasn't random. This wasn't chance. Something was hunting the ocean's top predator. Great white sharks are not just large animals. They are biological weapons refined by millions of years of evolution. They sit at the very top of most marine food chains. Adults have virtually no natural predators. Their size alone discourages attack. Their speed allows them to strike before prey can react. Their senses are tuned so precisely that even the faint electrical signals of muscle movement can be detected in the water. A fully grown great white can exceed 20 feet in length and weigh over 2,000 kilograms. Their serrated teeth are designed to slice through flesh and bone. Their bite force is catastrophic. In most ecosystems, the presence of a great white establishes dominance. Everything else adapts around them. And yet, here they were. Dead. Not shredded. Not consumed entirely, just harvested. For marine scientists, the most troubling detail wasn't the missing organs. It was the absence of resistance. No defensive wounds. No chaotic bite patterns. No signs that the sharks had even been able to fight back. It was as if they never stood a chance. The missing liver provided the first real clue. In great white sharks, the liver is enormous. It can make up nearly a quarter of the animal's total body weight. Unlike mammals, sharks don't rely on swim bladders for buoyancy. Instead, their livers are packed with lipids, especially squalene, a compound rich in energy and oil. This allows the shark to remain buoyant while conserving energy, but that same organ is also one of the most calorie-dense food sources in the ocean. To the right predator. A great white's liver is pure fuel, which meant whoever was responsible wasn't killing out of hunger or desperation. This was targeted, intentional, efficient, and the location made it even more unsettling. Gansby isn't just any stretch of coastline. It sits near Dyer Island, home to a thriving colony of Cape Fur seals. The abundance of seals has historically attracted great whites to the area in large numbers. Favorable temperatures, reliable prey, and protected waters have made this region one of the most important great white strongholds on Earth. This was their territory, and something had entered it. As news spread, theories exploded. Some blamed illegal human activity, suggesting poachers may have been harvesting organs. Others speculated about unknown deep-sea predators rising from the abyss. Online forums filled with increasingly wild ideas, but among marine biologists, one possibility stood above all others. Orcas. Killer whales. Orcas are among the most intelligent predators on the planet. Though they belong to the dolphin family, their hunting behavior rivals that of wolves, lions, and even humans. They don't just chase prey. They plan, they adapt, they coordinate. Across the world, orcas have demonstrated an astonishing range of hunting strategies. In Patagonia, they deliberately beach themselves to snatch seals from the shoreline before wriggling back into deeper water. In the North Pacific, pods of transient orcas isolate gray whale calves, separating them from their mothers through relentless harassment. Before delivering fatal blows, they are not impulsive hunters. They are strategists, and they have a history with sharks. In 1997, off the coast of California's Farallon Islands, a lone female orca was observed attacking a great white shark. The encounter was brief. The orca flipped the shark upside down, inducing a state known as tonic immobility. Sharks in this state become temporarily paralyzed. They cannot fight. They cannot flee. The orca removed the shark's liver and left the rest of the body behind. Nearly 2 decades later, similar behavior was documented in New Zealand, where orcas targeted 7-gill and mako sharks, again focusing on the liver with remarkable precision. The parallels were impossible to ignore. As scientists examined the Gansby carcasses more closely, subtle bruising began to emerge. Faint parallel marks, consistent with orca teeth, conical, not serrated, appeared along the bodies. The injuries were not severe, suggesting the sharks had been subdued quickly. This wasn't chaos. It was controlled. And then came the sightings. Local fishermen and tour operators began reporting the presence of 2 large male orcas moving through the area. They weren't part of a larger pod. They traveled together, just the 2 of them. Both were massive, powerful animals, but what made them unmistakable were their dorsal fins. One leaned sharply to the left. The other curved to the right. They were soon given names, Port and Starboard. The names stuck, and so did their reputation. Wherever these 2 appeared, shark activity seemed to vanish. Days after sightings, carcasses would sometimes surface. Always the same pattern. Missing liver, clean incision, no prolonged struggle. Evidence began to suggest that Port and Starboard had developed a specialized hunting technique. Researchers believe the pair learned how to approach great whites from below or behind, using coordinated movements to disorient them. Once close enough, they flipped the shark onto its back, triggering tonic immobility. From there, the outcome was inevitable. A 22,000-pound predator, rendered helpless in seconds, all for a 20-pound organ. The rest of the shark was left behind. And with every successful hunt, The balance of power in these waters shifted by late 2017. Cage diving operators were reporting unprecedented declines in great white sightings. Trips that once guaranteed encounters now returned empty-handed. Entire weeks passed without a single shark appearance. The ocean hadn't gone silent. It had changed. Asterisk. What followed the disappearance of the great whites was not immediate chaos, but something quieter and in many ways more unsettling. The ocean didn't erupt. There were no dramatic surface signs. Instead, there was absence. An emptiness where something powerful used to exist. For years, researchers had relied on Gansby as one of the most predictable locations on Earth to study great white sharks. Individuals could be identified, tracked, and observed returning season after season. Their movements were well documented. Their hunting patterns were familiar. But suddenly, those patterns broke. After the strandings of 2017, great whites didn't just decline in number. They vanished. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. Cage diving boats that once needed only minutes to spot sharks now spent entire days scanning empty water. Operators who had built their livelihoods around the reliability of these predators began canceling trips. Scientists reviewing satellite tags noticed something strange. Tagged sharks that normally returned to the area simply didn't come back. It wasn't mortality. It was avoidance. Great white sharks, creatures often portrayed as fearless, were abandoning one of their most valuable hunting grounds. And they weren't drifting randomly. They were moving with urgency, leaving the region entirely. This behavior had been observed before, but never on this scale. In other parts of the world, when orcas enter an area, great whites tend to disappear. The effect can last days, weeks, or even months. Sharks detect orcas not just visually, but chemically. Orcas leave behind scent trails in the water. To a great white, that scent is not just a warning. It's a declaration of dominance. Orcas don't need to attack every shark to control an area. Their presence alone is enough. And Gansby, that presence was relentless. Port and Starboard were not casual visitors. They returned repeatedly. Sightings placed them moving along hundreds of kilometers of coastline, yet always looping back. Their movements were efficient, purposeful, and eerily consistent. Unlike typical orca pods that travel with calves and extended family groups, these two operated alone. A pair. A hunting unit. Marine biologists began to suspect that Port and Starboard were specialists. Orcas are known to develop regional hunting cultures. Some pods hunt fish exclusively. Others focus on seals. Some target whales. Techniques are passed down through observation and imitation, not instinct. This meant that Port and Starboard hadn't simply stumbled upon shark hunting. They had learned it, perfected it. And now they were applying it repeatedly. Examination of later shark carcasses strengthened this conclusion. As more bodies were recovered over the years that followed, the same forensic signatures appeared. The incision points were consistent. The livers were removed with minimal collateral damage. In some cases, the heart was also taken, another organ rich in nutrients. There was no feeding frenzy. No waste. This was precision predation. One particularly striking detail emerged during necropsies. The position of the wounds suggested that the sharks were attacked from below or behind, angles that minimize the chance of detection. Great whites rely heavily on forward-facing senses. A coordinated approach from blind spots would drastically reduce reaction time. Once contact was made, tonic immobility did the rest. To understand how devastating this is, it's important to realize that tonic immobility isn't just a trick. It's a biological shutdown. Blood pressure drops. Muscle response slows. The shark becomes unresponsive. Even a creature as powerful as a great white is instantly reduced to passivity. Against that, size means nothing. the more scientists studied the pattern. The clearer it became that this wasn't an isolated anomaly. This was a behavioral shift. A new predator-prey dynamic unfolding in real time, and it didn't stop with great whites. As the great whites retreated, the ecosystem began to respond. Cape Fur seals, once under constant pressure from shark predation, began to increase in number. With fewer great whites patrolling the waters around Dyer Island, seal behavior changed. They became bolder. They foraged farther. They spent more time near shore. At first, this seemed harmless, even positive. But nature doesn't operate in isolation. As seal populations grew, their impact on other species intensified. Seals began preying more heavily on fish stocks and, critically, African penguins. Penguins that were already struggling due to habitat loss and food scarcity now faced increased predation pressure. The removal of the great white hadn't simply affected one species. It had destabilized an entire food web. Marine biologists refer to this phenomenon as a trophic cascade. When a top predator disappears, the effects ripple downward, altering behavior, population size, and survival rates across multiple levels of the ecosystem. In Gansby, the cascade was unfolding faster than anyone had expected. Meanwhile, Port and Starboard continued to roam. Reports placed them not just near Gansby, but along much of South Africa's coastline. Their range was vast and their movements unpredictable. Some months they vanished entirely. Then they would reappear hundreds of kilometers away, only to return again later. Each return reignited concern, because with each reappearance came the same question. Were they alone? Or were others learning? Orcas are cultural animals. Young orcas learn by watching adults. Techniques spread. Behaviors replicate. A single innovation can reshape the hunting strategies of entire populations over time. If shark hunting became culturally transmitted among South African orcas, the consequences could extend far beyond Gansby. Researchers began debating whether what they were witnessing was the beginning of a broader ecological shift. Great whites are slow-growing animals. They mature late. Their populations cannot rebound quickly from sustained pressure. Even non-lethal displacement can have long-term impacts on breeding and migration. And yet, from the orca's perspective, this was simply opportunity. The ocean is changing. Prey availability shifts. Human activity alters ecosystems. Predators that can adapt survive. Those that cannot fall behind. Port and Starboard had adapted. They had identified a high-energy food source. They had refined a low-risk method to access it, and they had proven that even the ocean's most feared predator could be neutralized in doing so. They shattered a long-held assumption about marine hierarchies. There is no permanent apex. Power in the ocean is not fixed. It is negotiated, challenged, and redefined. By 2019, the absence of great whites in Gansby had become undeniable. Long-term data sets confirmed what locals already knew. The sharks weren't just rare. They were functionally gone from the region for extended periods. Only occasionally would an individual appear briefly before disappearing again, always cautious, always transient. The great whites had learned to. Fear is not exclusive to prey species. Apex predators respond to threat just as quickly when the risk outweighs the reward. In evolutionary terms, retreat is not weakness. It's intelligence, but intelligence doesn't stop change. The ocean was reorganizing itself, and somewhere beneath the surface, two black and white silhouettes continued to patrol, silent and unchallenged. Time has a strange way of softening shock while sharpening understanding. In the years that followed the events off the coast of Gansby, the initial confusion slowly gave way to analysis, data, and reflection. What once seemed like an impossible anomaly became one of the most compelling case studies in modern marine science. not because it revealed something entirely new, but because it forced scientists to confront a reality they had long understood in theory, but rarely witnessed so clearly in practice. The ocean does not recognize hierarchy in the way humans do. Idea of an apex predator implies permanence, a final step beyond which nothing can climb. But in the natural world, dominance is conditional. It depends on context, environment, and the presence of something smarter, faster, or more adaptable. The great white shark had ruled these waters for centuries, perhaps longer. But rule does not mean invulnerability. Port and Starboard were living proof of that. As research continued, scientists pieced together a clearer picture of what had happened. The killings themselves, while dramatic, were only part of the story. The more significant impact lay in the psychological and ecological consequences that followed. The fear these orcas introduced into the system proved more disruptive than the physical loss of individual sharks. Great white sharks did not need to be wiped out to be displaced. They simply needed to be reminded that staying came at a cost. Tracking data revealed that when orcas entered a region, sharks altered their movement patterns almost immediately. They dove deeper. They moved faster. And when possible, they left altogether. Some traveled hundreds of kilometers to avoid areas recently visited by killer whales. In evolutionary terms, this response made perfect sense. Survival favors caution when the threat is overwhelming, but caution reshapes ecosystems. The gradual return of great whites to parts of the South African coastline has been inconsistent and fragile. Some areas have seen occasional recoveries. Others remain eerily quiet. The presence of port and starboard appears sporadic now, but their influence lingers. Even when they are absent, the memory of them remains written into the behavior of other species. This phenomenon is known as the ecology of fear. It describes how predators influence ecosystems not just by what they kill, but by what they scare. Fear changes where animals feed, where they travel, and how long they remain in certain areas. In this case, the fear of orcas altered the spatial dominance of great whites, which in turn reshaped the entire marine food web. For researchers, this raised difficult questions. Should humans intervene? Orcas are protected species. They are highly intelligent, socially complex, and culturally rich animals. What port and starboard did was not cruelty or excess. It was adaptation. It was innovation. It was nature operating without moral consideration. At the same time, great white sharks are vulnerable. Their populations are already under pressure from fishing, habitat loss, and climate change. The additional stress of displacement by orcas complicates conservation efforts. Protecting one apex predator now means understanding the impact of another. There are no easy answers. What is clear is that port and starboard were not anomalies. They were indicators, signals of a changing ocean where intelligence and adaptability may outweigh brute strength. As climate patterns shift and prey distributions change, predators capable of learning new strategies will thrive. Orcas fit that profile perfectly. They are not bound to a single food source. They are not locked into rigid behaviors. They observe, experiment, and remember. In that sense, they are less like animals and more like tacticians, and tacticians change the battlefield. The story of Gansby forced scientists to reconsider how they define dominance in marine systems. It highlighted the limitations of labeling species as ultimate predators. It revealed how fragile those titles can be when confronted by cooperation and cognition. The great white shark did not become weak. It simply meant something stronger in a different way. Today, sightings of great whites in South Africa continue to be monitored closely. Some regions are showing signs of cautious recovery. Others remain in flux. The balance has not been restored to what it once was, and it may never be. Nature rarely returns to old baselines once a threshold has been crossed. Port and Starboard still roam the waters of southern Africa. Their current whereabouts are often unknown. Sometimes they vanish for months, even years, only to be spotted again without warning. Each sighting carries weight, not because of what they might kill, but because of what their presence alone represents. A reminder that power is not fixed. That even the most feared predator can become prey. That intelligence reshapes survival in ways size never could. The ocean remains vast, indifferent, and alive with unseen struggles. Most of them will never be witnessed. Most will never be understood. But every so often, the sea allows a glimpse into its deeper truths, and when it does, it reminds us of something humbling. In the natural world, there are no permanent kings. Only survivors. If you stayed until the end, thank you. Your curiosity keeps these stories alive. And somewhere beneath the waves, the hunt continues, quiet, calculated, and unseen.